Hi there, it's Martin Bailey here. Today I'm going to talk about my recent experiences with processing images in Phase 1's Capture One Pro 9. As you know, I've not been using Capture One for so long, a couple of months now, but I've just got back from two great trips in Greenland and Iceland, and I have used Capture One to process my images throughout. After I got back to Japan here, I have continued. I've worked with Capture One every day, and I've found a few things that I am really, really excited about. One of the biggest things is that when I first tested Capture One Pro a few months ago, I was feeling as though I was having to work quite a lot to get the look that I wanted in my images still. The value was there because the image quality is just so incredible. But I was really happy to find that the majority of the time I'm getting really good results. These images that you see on my screen now, this is just a few slider tweaks to get the image exactly how I want it. I'm also avoiding using plugins like Color Effects Pro and Silver Effects Pro. I'm avoiding jumping into Photoshop. And the workflow has really, really sort of ironed out. I've managed to iron out all of the creases. And a big part of that is that Capture One Pro is very customizable. As you can see at the moment, I've got my dual display set up, and I have, for example, toolbars on both of the screens. I have also gone through and customized the heck out of the keyboard shortcuts. As a person that teaches the software that I use in environments like this and face-to-face, I was faced with the dilemma of whether or not to try to continue to use the default shortcuts that Phase 1 decides for the program. But instead, what I'm doing is I'm actually going to just share my shortcuts. You can switch your shortcut sets very easily. So if you're on a Mac, it'll be really easy. I'm not sure yet if I can share these with Windows users. I'm not sure if they're compatible. But I have put a page together where you can go and download my shortcut cheat sheet. So this is all of the shortcuts that I've configured, as well as the ones that are already there by default. And you can just print this out as a PDF, print it out, put it on your screen. And there are so many shortcuts. I'm basically just leaving it on my desk. And the more I use it, the more shortcuts I use, and the more likely I am to just recall from memory what the shortcut was, and then you go straight to it. I've used it to overcome a number of issues that I thought were originally there, like not being able to use the X key for reject as I used to do in Lightroom. Now I've just assigned the X key to the purple color tag, and then there's another key that I've assigned that will, with just one shortcut, will then display only the purple images. That gives me the ability to quickly go through and make sure that they're all ones that I mean to delete, and then Command A and delete them all. So I've got the workflow a lot more smooth and streamlined. So let's jump in. On the computer, I'm going to only use one display because we can't really do a dual display setup in a screen capture. But I'll show you some of the things that I've been doing, and also how easily I'm getting great results with some of my images, and also some of the ways in which I'm using the adjustments to just tweak them a little bit further. So let's jump in and take a look. Okay, so here we are in the computer. Let's first show you the setup that I'm using with the dual display. So I have set it up so that I've got my thumbnails on one screen. This is generally set up on my iMac screen, and if I can't actually show you multi-monitors, I can't record two monitors at the same time, but I can show you the window. So this is how I usually have the BenQ wide gamut display set up, and obviously the wide gamut shows me more colors, it shows me the image more beautiful than the iMac screen does. So I want to see the maximum potential that my images have, and so I have this big browser view over on the BenQ display. And you can see that, I've got most of the tools at the top here. I've got toolbars down the right side, and we can get rid of those. I've got the Command T button set up to toggle this on and off, and a whole bunch of different shortcut keys that we'll touch on shortly. But you can see that you can actually do quite a lot in the second window. But at the moment, because we're going to do this on a single display, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my thumbnails. And once you've set these things up and created new toolbars and things, you can just save these as presets. So I've got one here called Right Thumbnails. And if I select that, this is how I'm often working in, grabbed something there. This is how I'm often working on a single display. This is how I work on my laptop, for example. I like having the thumbnails over on the right here because it gives me the ability to quickly go through and select other images. And it also, you can see that I've got a really good aspect ratio here in the middle. If I view landscape orientation images while I have the thumbnails on the bottom, then it kind of eats into the image a little bit. It makes it smaller. So I'm really enjoying this right thumbnails thing. But of course, also for portrait aspect images, for vertical images, again, you get a bit of space either side. But rather than having the thumbnails on the bottom, you can see the image pretty much full screen. So this is a nice layout that I'm working with. I wanted to touch on a few other things. That everything that you see here is customizable. So I've changed the buttons at the top. With the default view that you get when you first install Capture One, you might not see this same sort of thing. I really struggled with whether or not to leave it as the default, but because it is so customizable, I've just gone ahead and changed it all. And I have, like for example here, I've got an extra tool set that I've added just for things that I use quite a lot, just for checking the images, evaluate the exposure and all various things. So you can just create all of these, save them as various views. I think I even added the button up here so you can save your workspace. And I've got the bottom thumbnails just to show you this. Look, that's what happens when you go with the bottom thumbnails. And it obviously all images are going to get shorter in height. So I'm going to go through once again, just go back to the right thumbnails. And this is how we're going to look at the images today and just work through a few of them. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that because I have, let me show you these. This is just a JPEG, but I've got a whole bunch of keyboard shortcuts that I have added and configured in addition to the defaults. Some of the defaults I've changed, but I've made this available for you as well. If you haven't done much customization of the shortcuts, I've actually put a page together which we can go to. I will show you this. So if you go to mbp.ac/co shortcuts, it'll take you to this page. And if you just want to reference these on screen, then you can just go to here and just drag this to your desktop like I have with this. But I have also put together let me just click down here, get rid of that. So I've put together a cheat sheet PDF, so you can actually download this as a PDF and print it out. And also I'm going to share the settings file, so you could go and just copy this to your computer and use the same shortcuts. And I'll show you this in Capture One. What it basically will do is if we go to Edit Keyboard Shortcuts, it will add this MBP keyboard shortcuts, and all of the shortcuts in that list will be available for you. And you can do that just to try, and you can go back to the default very easily just by reselecting it here. If you have changed your own shortcuts, then you probably would want to create a copy of those as well. Just, I think you hit the duplicate here, and then it will make a copy of the shortcuts, and then you can change them and rename them. If you've already done that, then you can just add this to a specific folder on your computer, and you'll be able to use the same shortcuts that I'm using. And as I'm adding or changing the shortcuts, I'm going to update that page and re-release those, and I'll put versions on there so you can just check back occasionally to see what's new. So if I'm hitting shortcuts today that you think, okay, well, that's not on my computer, that's the reason, and that's how you could remedy it, or just figure it out and remap them yourself. So I just quickly here, I've just got back from Greenland and Iceland. This is my Iceland set. Iceland set. And, obviously a great time, beautiful images. From, obviously by my standards, you might not think that, but the place is absolutely incredible, and obviously gives us plenty of opportunity to make some great photos. Now, I am going to talk a little bit about a few of the shortcuts that I'm using before we move on. So, for example, at the moment, if we look up here, I've got the multiple image view set, and that means that if I select more than one image, it will give us multiple images on the screen. But that's not always what you want to do, so you have the option to go to just the primary image view. And I've, just as an example, I've set up a shortcut which is Alt Command M, so Alt Command M to go to multiple view, and Alt Command P to go back to primary view. So just because I like to be able to switch through these things, and I often don't have this toolbar available up here. For example, I've created another shortcut which is Control Command T, which just gets rid of that toolbar, and that makes it so that you can view your images even larger. And of course, that means I don't have something to go press, so I can go back to my multiple view and prime view without having to locate that button. You may have recalled from an earlier blog post tutorial that I did where I missed the X key from Lightroom, where you can mark things as rejected, and then you just hit the command and delete to get rid of them. And I was sort of using the method proposed by someone on the Phase 1 team, which was using the red label. But that means that I use red for different reasons. I didn't really want to do that. So what I did was I looked, as I got into editing the shortcuts, I realized that you could actually you could assign a key to the labels. So what I've done is, so that I can keep my old Lightroom muscle memory going, I've mapped the X key to the purple key. I never use purple label for anything. So say if I'm going through here and I'm looking for images that I want to delete, I can just hit the X key, and you can see over here the images are being marked with a purple tag. And then say, for example, I say, oh, yeah, actually, you know what, I'm going to keep that. I've mapped the none or no labels to N. So if I hit the N key, it gets rid of that. And then the other cool thing is that you can also map the filters. So I've got Shift X, and that now shows me only the purple labeled keys. And that means that I can then go through and just do a Control A and delete all of these if I wanted to. I'm obviously going to check before that I do actually want to remove them. And because these three images, I've just, this is from my final selection, I don't want to delete them, so I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is just hit the N key to get rid of those tags, and then hit the Shift X again to get rid of the filter that I've just set up. So that's a really easy way to kind of replicate the Lightroom X for reject, and then I can really easily get a list of images that I've rejected and delete them. So that's a nice workflow improvement as well, in my opinion. And one last shortcut that I'm going to mention for now is that I want to mention this label view down here as well. So in Lightroom, obviously, you can hit the I for information and you get the shooting information over the image here. And that was always useful. And I kind of missed that. So I was looking for something similar in Capture One. And they have this label bar here. And I really like this because it's okay to have it over the image, but this is so unobtrusive. I can just leave this here the whole time if I want to. And, just see I've got ISO, I've got the shutter speed, the aperture and the focal length. I've got the file name and then the color label and the number of stars. And so I really like that, but I don't necessarily want it there the whole time. So I've mapped Shift Command L for labels to just get rid of that, and you can toggle it on and off. So again, just a few things that are making the workflow feel more comfortable to me and just speed up and optimize the process of working in Capture One Pro. So what I'd like to do now is go through and actually just talk about a few of the images and show you some of the things that I have been, some of the ways that I'm changing the images to make them feel more like the place that I was, and to really just sort of to bring out the detail. I'm finding that I'm getting this level of detail very, very easily. So for example, if we take a look here, I haven't really changed anything on this screen. The thing on this let's see what this is called. So this is the exposure tool set, and you can see at the top we've got the histogram, we have exposure down here, and you can see that the first thing I've changed here, not necessarily in this order, but in the order we'll see them on the screen. The first thing is that I've increased the saturation. And what I'm going to do actually is just show you, I'm going to create a new variant, not a clone variant, because a clone variant will have all of the changes that I've made. So this is the image straight out of the camera. And this is the image that you'll see that we were just looking at. You can see there's a big difference, but there's actually very little that's been done to it. So let's take a look at these things. The first thing actually, I'm just noticing as we flick between these two, this one it's got a little bit of lens correction assigned to it. So I'm going to go over here to this lens correction tool tab, and you can see that it's got 100% distortion removed, and that's taking away the distortion because Capture One Pro has a lens profile for the 24-70 f2.8 Mark II lens. Now, if we go to the crop tool, which I've just clicked on here, you can see that to do that, it's actually removed, it's cropped the image, so I'm losing pixels. And being a bit of a pixel freak, I don't really want that to happen. So whenever I am finding that there is, I'm going to hit the hand tool just to get rid of that. Whenever I don't have a horizon or something that I need to straighten, I'm actually just removing that effect. So now we can see that the image it doesn't change as we switch from one to the other. I don't want to throw away pixels unnecessarily. Another reason for that, it's not just because of my addiction to pixels, but throwing it away, what it means is I'm actually reframing, and I'm very careful with how I frame my images in the field, so I don't necessarily want to do that. So let's go back to the changes here. So obviously with the original in mind there, we can go back and see that, I've pumped up the saturation a little bit. But here, this is actually where we've got the majority of the changes. If I take this highlight back down to 0 and take the shadows down to 65, you'll see that we actually get quite a lot closer to the original image. And I'm going to put that back because I want them where they were. So the highlights, you can see it brings out the sky quite a lot. This is in the high dynamic range tab, and I don't like the name of this because I'm not a high HDR type person, but the results could be considered a little bit like HDR. It brings out a lot of the detail, and you're bringing out shadow detail. But the important thing here to me is that I'm doing it with one image, And, I mean, I generally expose to the right, so you can see we're getting a little bit back from the way it's processed, but I would have been exposing so that the sky was just about overexposing. It was just about on the point where highlight warnings were showing, in the camera, that is, not in post. But then bringing out the detail. So all of these dark areas in the foreground, I'm just bringing it out in post. So again, let's go back here. A slight change to the levels, just moving the midtone down to minus 0.08, and got nothing on the curves here. The other big change that I've done is clarity, and that's in punch mode. So I'm going to remove that, and well, I can leave that in punch because it's 0 on. And you can see again that the amount of change that we're seeing here. Let me just, so don't need that to be minus 40. So 40 on the clarity is actually adding a lot of that punch. Just to show you the difference between neutral. See, there's a tiny difference there when you go from neutral to punch. But that's really one of the biggest changes that's bringing out this look and the greens and everything. And also I'm increasing the structure. And you can't really see the effect of structure until you zoom in. Let's give this a moment to, here we go, let's look for something where we can see a bit of the structure. So if we take this off, you see that it's it goes a little bit softer, and plus 20 on the structure is just bringing it out. It's sharpening the edges a little bit. That might even be a little bit too much, but that's what I've been going for. Some people down here didn't even know they were there. So, yeah, they're the main changes. So you can see that, I mean, it's really pretty easy to go from this to this with just a few clicks. And let's get rid of this before I forget. So, in fact, I'm just going to hit the delete key. So I've also got a few images marked that I wanted to look at, and I've just marked them with a blue tag. So we can go through and take a look at some of these. I wanted to talk a little bit more about, well, firstly, black and white. And the image that we just looked at is a great example of how I'm no longer having to use Color Effects Pro, the Google or Nik software package. So no more Color Effects Pro, because I can do that pretty much right here in Capture One. And I haven't used Silver Effects Pro since I started using Capture One either. And if we look at this, I mean, the sky here, we've got beautiful detail in the sky. Again, I mean, this was a good sky. Let me show you a new variant to show you the original. So you can see there was already a good amount of detail in the sky, but it's very easy to work on the raw file and get to this point. And I wanted to go through and actually just show you some of these, some of the changes that I've made. So the first one, obviously, going to black and white, it means that I've turned this enable black and white checkbox. And also you can see here that I've reduced the yellow down to minus 80. And yellow is basically, it's, greens, especially if we look at this, the yellow in greens is usually the majority of the color. So reducing the yellow is generally enough. And my aim, of course, there is to darken down this foreground. But I've also done a few other things. If we look here, you can see that I've moved the white point on the levels. I've moved that down by 5. So you can see what that's doing is actually brightening up the image a little bit. Let's try and put that back to 250, which is where it was. There we go. And you can see that I've also changed the mid-tone or the midpoint, and that's gone down to minus 5. You can see that if we lower that on here, that becomes a positive number, and that's making the midtones brighter. And if we move it upwards, it's making the midtones darker. So I was actually at, it's taking a moment to go back. So I was at, I think, minus 0.10. There we go. So I've left the black point where it is, basically because the blacks are already quite dark. Here's another key that I think I mapped. Maybe this was a default. So Command E will turn on the exposure warnings. And if I show you here, if I take this above 0, it actually starts to plug up the blacks. So that means that they're like 0, total black, and nothing that would, if I printed, nothing would come out. And that starts to happen even from 1. And I've got my warnings set from 1 to 254, I think it is. So just that literally zeros and 255s will show me exposure warnings. I'm pretty aggressive with that stuff. So the other thing though, I did some of these changes to darken down this foreground. I love having these Iceland pictures with really contrasty dark rocks, and the foreground here, I wanted it out of the way. And to help me do that, I've also added in the Luma curve, I've done a little bit of work. If we look here, there's nothing in RGB, but in the Luma one, I've reduced this, and I've put 4 different points on here. You can actually do this, add these by taking this picker here and going over the image at the places that you want to change the color of. And I sometimes do that. It's good for skies and things like that. But here, generally what I'm doing is I'm looking at where these, where the histogram in the background there is falling, and then just going in and clicking straight on the image. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit H for the hand tool. So yeah, just go in and click on the line and moving it up and down. And as I do that, that's given me, obviously down here, I've deepened my shadows just a little bit, the midtones a little bit as well, but I've placed these up here to just take the highlights very slightly over center, and here to sort of normalize them again. And once again, a little bit of clarity on the punch mode. Let's just take this off just to show you. Okay, there we go, it's down to 0. And then I'll do a Control Z to put that back, and you'll be able to see the difference. So it brings out a lot of the detail there, and also enhances the sky. And again, a little bit of structure. So the other thing though, is that I want to talk here about adjustment layers. And adjustment layers, we can see them up here. You'll see that I've got a whole bunch of layers. Some of these are heals and some of them are adjustments. I'm going to take this adjustment, turn off the adjustment one for a moment, and you should be able to see down the bottom here, all of the grass has just got quite a lot brighter. And that's because I have an adjustment layer and I've changed the settings for it. And what I want to do here is I'm going to hit B for brush, and we need to see which one of these is the selected one. We need to see which one that is. So I'm going to go here and say always display mask. And you can see that this one here, the orange one, the orange point there, is showing me that that's where I started painting. And this is the mask that I drew in. And I've literally just, if I hit this key here, I have literally just used a big brush, and you can change the feather with the shift and then the bracket keys. And I've just gone in, you want a bit of feather on here, because if you don't, you end up with a very harsh line and it's easy to see what you've changed. But this is what I've done to basically create the, I've painted this over here to create the adjustment layer. And then I've just going to hit V to get rid of that. And the shortcut to not show the layer was M. So what I want to do is show you what I actually changed with that. You can see here that the exposure, I've set that to 0.8. And if we remove that, you can see that it brings it straight back. And then a Control Z to put that back again. But I think that's about it. So that's just quickly walking you through some of the changes that I did for this image. And again, I'm going to get rid of that before I forget. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is the cloning. Here's another image. You can see again, very dark rock. I'll do another new variant to show you the original, but very different. And you can also see here that there's a lot of people down the background. And this is the south coast, especially places that are drivable from Reykjavik. You get a lot of tourists in Iceland these days. And if you're trying to do a number of things in one day, you can't spend the time to wait for everyone to leave. There at Skogafoss, we get lucky sometimes, but at Seljalandsfoss, which is these falls, it's very hard to get no one in the background. So I've basically cloned them out. And I wanted to use this image to show you some of the things that I've done. I'm also going to show you another shortcut. Shift Command C, I've set that up to copy the adjustments that I've made to an image. And if I move to the next image, Shift Command V will take all of those adjustments and apply them to the new image. If we give that a moment. There we go. So then I'm going to hit the hand key, H for hand, and click down here, we can see that it's also copied over the cloning that I've done. So I'm going to go to this here, and you'll see that I've got a whole bunch of, I'm going to just remove these. Let's just get rid of a few of these. So I can't do a So here we go. So you see that we've got a few people. Here we go, now lots of people. So what I wanted to show you is that I actually got this from David Grover on the Phase 1 team. David's been incredibly helpful as I've got into using Capture One. I was actually suggesting an enhancement where once you have an adjustment brush, in working with an adjustment brush, what I was doing was say for example here, I've got a heel layer selected at the moment. So I was coming up here, hitting that brush, and then I was coming down, just got to change this a little bit. Oops. Let's just call this a heel layer. And then bring this brush size down. And then I was drawing over the people to get rid of them. Sorry, people. And then this is going to go away and select somewhere on the photograph to get rid of them. Here we go. I have to change this. So this is the other thing. I'm going to change this from an adjustment layer to a heel layer. And then it goes away and finds somewhere to use to as a base to get rid of these people. So, I mean, that works fine. But then if I go over, say, to these people and start to paint there, you can see it's actually painted on the same layer. And sometimes that works. And you notice that a load of people came through with just deleting one layer. That's fine. But sometimes it brings in a totally wrong part of the image. So let me just show you this. Say, for example, I go to here and I want to remove this person. This might work as well because it's just directly above. But for example, if I do that and there's something up here that I don't want, it's always going to take the same area from above the place that you're trying to clone. So what I did was I wanted to have a way to, first of all, when I create a new layer, to make it a heel layer without having to do anything else. Rather than going up here and selecting heel, because it's always an adjustment layer when you start with the brush. And I also wanted a way, like a key, to be able to just make a new brush, a new layer, without having to go and clicking on this button here for a new layer and then going back into heel. And I emailed David and he just said, yeah, well, actually, you can just create shortcut keys for that. And so what I've done is I have set up so that I can have Control Command A will give me Let me just do this. So Control Command A will automatically create, and you see up here, we've got layer 8 was created, and it's an adjustment layer. So Control Command A for adjustment. But I can also, I did Control Command H, and that automatically creates me a new heal layer. So now, rather than using the same base location to copy across, I can get a new one and go in and make a different source for the cloning or the healing, and this really speeds up the process. So down here, if I start to do this, it'll go to the same sort of thing and take the same source. This probably around here works for this particular place, but I might not want that. So again, I can just do Command Heal, Control Command Heal, and it will create me a new heal layer. So that's another great way to speed up the workflow. Probably not the best image to show you that with, because a lot of these people, the sources was good for multiple copies. But the other thing you can see I've done is I've actually gotten rid of. Here we can see, if I'll just turn these off, I've created a few layers to get rid of this grass island and this down here. So I'll just go back to these here, I really just don't like them. I'd rather just have the water basin here. So, I mean, I would have thought it would have been necessary to go into Photoshop, but the more I can do on the original raw files, the happier I am, because that means I can get the benefits of the future updates to the processing engine as Phase 1 improve that. And this goes for Lightroom as well. I mean, I've always wanted to try to keep in the base raw processing software as much as possible, and that, without even having to go to, I'm just going to go to this image because that's got rid of all of these last people. So without removing the necessity to go into Photoshop for things like this and all of this cloning that I've done, for me, it's pretty powerful. I'd rather just not do that. I wanted to show you another image here. There's a lot of black and white, but sorry about that. I wanted to show you something else that I did in here, because you can actually change if we go here, so I've got this layer called Darken C Stack. You can see that I've not only darkened this C Stack, I've darkened pretty much all of the water there as well. And I did that by drawing this mask, but you can see that I've actually drawn over a larger area than the C Stack, and yet, turn that off again, and yet you can see that really the background hasn't changed that much. It's only changed the C Stack. And that to me is useful because sometimes you want to change something, but you don't really want to get into drawing masks. Drawing masks, if you've got something that is a totally different color in the background in Capture One, it's really easy. You can just select the color and then convert that to a mask. So like pull out a blue sky really easily. We'll probably do that in a different tutorial, but rather than doing that, what I did was I used a slightly different technique. Now, I want to point out that under this local adjustments, you've got all of these things. I think I might have added a few of these as well, but you can change exposure, the high dynamic range stuff, but all of these, you'll note that they're all zeroed out. These are pretty much all the default values. So initially you think, okay, so what has he changed? Before I show you that, what you have to do is here, you right click these ellipses and it says adjust selected layer. So if I wanted to use these, then turn that on and I can literally go in and change that. But you see what I mean? It's changing the sky behind the C Stack as well. So I'm going to zero that out. The cool thing is that you can actually go in and adjust. So if we look at the curves, you can see that if I select adjust selected layer here, you can see that I've actually got a different curve which is assigned just to that layer. So I've left the midtones and the highlights the same. That's why this doesn't affect the clouds. But I've made the sea, if I go so crazy with that, you can see what it's doing. So I've made the sea and the 1C stack darker by applying a curve on a totally different toolbar. And again, that can be totally independent. If I turn off adjust selected layers, that's totally different to the curve that I've got assigned to the rest of the image. So it's really powerful to be able to go through and select the tools and just take those changes and apply them to the layer. And that's what I've done there. So let's take a quick look at the rest of what I've done to this as well, though, because if we see, this is actually one photograph, but I've brought out a lot of detail again just by the messing around with the Luma curve. And I will go in, just do a quick new variant to show you the original again. This is the original. You can see that I do have a fair amount of this that is totally plugged up, but it's areas that are in deep shadow anyway. So if I turn that off, you can see this is the original image. But as I just showed you, there's actually still quite a lot of detail. Up here we've lost it. I'm not too worried about that. But you can bring out enough of the detail in these shadows here to give you the impression that you are still seeing inside the cave. And so, this is just done really again with relatively few modifications, just changing here I've increased the deep shadows, which is how I've brought out this. You can also see that I've got the shadows pumped up to 94. If we take that down, you can see that again, that's really deep shadows, but bringing it out a lot here, and that really helps to increase the contrast and be able to see into the shot. But also highlights. If we take the highlights off, you can see that that's what I've done to increase the texture in the sky. So it's really quite easy to get to a sort of image that you want, and then you do still have, as I say, these local adjustments if you want to go in and still change a little bit more. The thing that I was trying to overcome here, of course, is that the left C stack has got a bit of haze over it, and the right one is darker. So I just wanted to even that out, and I did that with the local adjustments and the tone curve. So last couple of things I wanted to show you here. Another thing that I've been doing, again, we'll take a quick look at this, but if I show you the adjustments that I've made here, this is at Yokel Salon, and we've got, again, an image that I have just done very little really. I've got a slight modification on the mid-tone, a slight change to the white point, and this is the white point on the input. So you can change the top as well. The output is done by the top here, so that would be a way that you can actually use this to save highlights as well. But again, I've got the highlights pumped up. I've got the shadow detail pulled out. It's probably not one of the best images to show you this, but I'll just show you the original as well. So you can see that this is pretty flat, and I've brought out quite a lot of detail with that. Again, punch clarity up to 40, structure at 20. And the other thing that I've shown you this image because I'm going to hit the G key to select the gradient tool here, gradient mask, and you can see that has displayed a little the marker here that shows you that I have a gradient mask assigned. I'm going to hit the M key to show you what it's doing, and so basically I've taken this gradient mask tool and I've just drawn upwards. Because I want it straight, I've held the shift key down as I do this, and then just basically drawn a gradient. And on that gradient I have assigned, actually what we need to do is go in and select adjust selected layer. you can see that on that gradient I have a little bit of clarity assigned. If we remove that, you can see that it's only affecting the bottom part of the image. Put that back. Okay, and we can just check these. Yeah, see if I've got anything. No. Okay, check. Here we go. So the exposure as well. What I've done is I've added plus 0.4 exposure. So if we knock that out, you can see that that's what I've done basically is just brighten the bottom part of the image up. And that's really how I do the neutral grad stuff. You see people still using neutral gradient filters in there, or great gradual neutral density filters in the field. And I haven't used one of those for like 15 years. That basically the technology now and the dynamic range that we have in the photos is, in most cases, not all, but most cases, it's enough to overcome the difference in contrast. And so I sort of got out of the habit of using those, and I just do it in software now. So if I can come in and brighten up and change the contrast and the clarity just on specific parts of the image afterwards, to me it's really just easier to do it that way. Plus those grad filters for really wide lenses are huge, and I just can't be doing with carrying them around. Let's see, I think that's a similar thing. Oh no, this was the let's get rid of this. Okay, so one last thing that I wanted to talk about is that some of if we look at the lens correction here, you'll see that this image it's marked with, the profile is marked as generic. And this is I shot this with the 100 to 400 Mark II lens, and there is no profile for it. You could argue that you don't really need it because it's a long lens anyway. But if you see here, the distortion, I've got it at 15%. So if I hit this grid and guides thing here, you can see that I've actually got a guide that's already on the screen. You do that by, once you've clicked on the show grid and guides button, you can go to view and add guide and horizontal guide, and that will add one of these. Got an orange thing here. Okay, so then let's go in and take a look at the edges here. Yeah, as we're looking at the edge, if we move this slider, we can see that we can bring the edge up. If I go, so that's gone too far, see? And then actually we're looking at about 8 at the moment. I had it at 15. But if we just go back, check the middle. Let's move this again, because the middle has probably moved slightly as well. So move that up to the middle and then go back to the edge. Perhaps go a little bit more. Probably back to 10. And then you see that's now straight with the edge. The center is fine, and then just check the right side. Now that's perfect as well. So you can see that you can actually remove the distortion to get your horizon straight pretty easily, and then just to get rid of the line so that we can see the original image again, you're click on the show guides. Let's just see, was it show guides and show grid and guides? So that's one way. I'm at a different number. I obviously was a bit too aggressive with this before. Maybe did it on my laptop and couldn't see as well. But yeah, so you can go in and change the distortion manually if you need to. And I know I've heard from people that say they don't like Capture One because it doesn't offer enough control over keystoning and the distortion. You've got the keystone tools and you've got the tools to do this. It would be nice if there were more lens profiles and it was just automatic, but I'm sure Phase One are working on that, and even if they don't, there are ways to overcome that. So I'm going to go back to this filter and stop filtering on the blues, just stop filtering on anything. And then, yeah, I don't think there's any other major things that I wanted to show you here. Again, just quick look at the settings. So you can see here, just generally quick tweaks to the luma curve, the clarity and structure, and often the levels. The levels is really my go-to. Actually, one last thing that I want to show you before we wrap up is that the other great thing is that you can create styles. And if we look under here, I'm not creating a style for everything, but once you've made a few changes, you can save a user style with this. And you can see here I've got like blue iceberg, various looks that I've made, green glacier, and there's all sorts of ways that you can use this. And I'm starting to build up a nice library of styles that I can apply to images. And I'm also finding that I'm using the copy styles as much as well. So I'll maybe working on a list of images. I've got this one, and this one that are all pretty much the same. And so I might not save a style for it, but I can use that command or these arrow keys here, and this will copy the style, and then I can just apply that to the next image. You see it was slightly different, so I'm going to Control Z to get out of that. But yeah, either that or I think it was, here we go. So Shift Command C to copy the style and move to the other images. And you can select multiple images and then just either use this button or the shortcut, which I've assigned Shift Command V, and you can apply those changes as well. Okay, so I'm just going to do a Control or Command Z to get rid of, to take that away again. So that's really it, though. I think this has become quite long anyway, so I'm not going to go through and show you anymore. At the moment, I do plan on doing more of these tutorials, but for today, let's just call it quits. Very powerful, still absolutely loving Capture One, and I think I want to just select one last photo to leave there as I talk you out. Okay, so what I have done as well, like I say, I've put together a page to give you those shortcuts. That's at mbp.ac/co shortcuts. And I also wanted to let you know about if you don't yet use Capture One and you're thinking of buying it, the first thing I recommend you do is just give it a try. You can use it for all of the features. I think it's a 30-day trial, so give it a good try first, because it's not for everyone. But I truly believe that the image quality is just so awesome that it makes it worth getting over the few bits that aren't quite as intuitive as you might hope. But once you've done that, if you go to mbp.ac/COPRO, so CO Pro, Capture One Pro, it will take you to this page. There's also a link in the sidebar of my blog pages, and if you click on that, you can go to the page here, which will show you the code. And when you check out, if you buy the full version, it's not the subscription and not for Sony versions of Capture One Pro, but otherwise, if you buy a license, use the code AMBP. That's for MBP for Martin Bailey Photography, of course, and that will give you a 10% discount. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that I will be putting more. This will be the fourth sort of tutorial type post that I've done on Capture One, and I'll put a link on the screen right now, which will take you to a list of all of my Capture One Pro tutorials. So this one's not out yet, obviously I'm still making this, but the video will be in this list as well. and this will obviously grow over time. So if you wanted to see what else I've talked about, I've already talked about importing and organizing photos in Capture One Pro, and exporting and printing images. And then there's my post about jumping ship, why I've jumped ship, and that's got some direct comparisons with original processed images from Lightroom and then the image processed in Capture One, so that you can see the difference. Someone after an earlier, I think it was after that one, said that they could smell a buyout. I haven't received any money for switching this. It's totally on my own bat. I just have fallen in love with the program. There obviously is some affiliate money that's probably going to come through as you use that code, but that's really just payment for the work that I put in producing the things like this video. So believe me when I say I'm just using Capture One now because I absolutely love it. The quality of the images that I'm getting from Capture One are blowing me away. So thanks very much for listening, and if you've got any questions, let me know. This blog post will be at mbp.ac/544. So I'll hopefully see you there. Check out the rest of the stuff that I've got on the blog as well, and if you've got any questions, just drop me a line or use the voicemail widget that's on the side of the blog and just let me know. Thanks very much for watching today. If you enjoy this podcast, usually audio, but today's a video, if you enjoy it, then do share a link with your friends. Subscribe in iTunes or your favorite podcast program to ensure uninterrupted delivery. And if you have a moment to rate the podcast or leave us a review in iTunes, that really helps to keep us relevant in the huge number of podcasts out there now. You can find me on Google+, Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and links to everything that I'm up to are at martinbaileyphotography.com, so do drop by and take a look. I'll be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, you take care and have a great week, whatever you're doing. Bye-bye.